Hello everyone, and thanks for watching this in conversation between artist Laura Wilson and Senior Collections Officer Dawn Heywood as part of our online archaeology festival. My name is Jenny and I'm the Exhibitions and Interpretation Officer at the collection. We're working with Mansions of the Future to co-commission a new performance work from Laura that responds to our rich archaeology collection, focusing specifically on items related to salt production in the region. Through her practice, Laura is interested in how history is carried and evolved through everyday materials, trades, and craftsmanship. She works with specialists to develop sculptural and performative works that amplify the relationship between materiality, memory, and tacit knowledge. Dawn Heywood is collections curator and has worked with the rich collections held by Lincolnshire County Council for over 14 years. This in conversation will introduce you to some of the areas that Laura is exploring through her research. Due to the evolving nature of this commission, if you're interested in finding out more about this project and Laura's work, we would love to hear from you. So please email us on the collection's email address found in the event listing. We're really pleased to be working on this project with Mansions of the Future, and Kerry is here to briefly introduce Mansions and the vision of our co-commissioning partners before leading us directly into the in conversation event.
Hi, thanks, Jenny. So my name's Kerry and I'm the Artistic Director at Mansions of the Future. It's an arts and cultural hub located in Lincoln City Centre, and we're currently operating remotely. We work with artists and communities to co-create work which is social, site-specific and collaborative. The current season of activity in our final legacy year is called Lincoln Live. Departing from Lincoln's rich entertainment and theatre history, Lincoln Live features new commissions which exist at the intersections of disciplinary boundaries and features new work from artists, musicians and dancers. In the wake of COVID, we have been working together with commissioned artists and collaborators to rethink and reimagine how programmed workshops, talks and activity can be shared and enjoyed together with audiences in a safe, virtual, domestic and necessarily personal environment, hence which is why we're here on Zoom today. We are also joined by Colette Griffin, who is a curator at Mansions of the Future, and you'll hear more from her towards the end of the talk. It is a great pleasure to now hand over to Laura Wilson and Dawn Heywood, who are going to be in conversation.
Great. Thanks, Jenny and Kerry, for the brilliant introductions. And Dawn, thank you so much for joining me today on Zoom. I'm sorry that we can't do this face-to-face in real life in Lincoln. But I, first of all, wanted to ask you about your job, because obviously the first time we met was in Lincoln at the collection, and you showed me some amazing objects from the collection. And I would just like to know more about what you do and also the journey that you kind of took to getting to that, that role.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yes, well, my job involves managing the collections here, based at the Collection Museum and also the Usher Gallery. So I work mainly with the art and archaeology collections, but across the Heritage Service for Lincolnshire County Council. And my main job involves caring for those collections, so ensuring that they're safe, stored correctly, that the environment's all correct, but also allowing researchers in, answering inquiries about them, bringing people into the stores to access the collections so that people can carry out research and study them, which is really important to us to add to our understanding of those collections. And then also I get to display the objects as well, which is always great fun, and allow people to see all our amazing collections that we have in store. So I worked at other museums before I came to Lincolnshire. So I've worked for an independent museum in Gloucestershire and also for the National Trust, but I did study museum studies for my master's degree, and previously had studied archaeology. So I'd always had a love of the subject from a young age, so that's really what drew me into working in museums.
Wow. And what does a typical day look like for you?
It can change so easily and so quickly, and I think that's that's the really nice thing about the job, that it is so varied. So it can be anything from working on our database, inputting new items that we might have acquired, or checking information, as I say, answering public inquiries, or helping other members of the teams with their inquiries as well, if we're putting an exhibition together or display, finding out the information for that. Or it could be actually physically moving things around. We're always up ladders, or it can be quite a physical job as well, sort of moving boxes around, and then we get the fun thing of giving people guided tours or talk, or inviting people in to look at things. So there's always something different happening.
Wow, what a fantastic job. So fascinating. And I'm sure you've seen lots of really, unique things within the collection. I mean, as you know, I visited the stores, which is about, a couple of minutes walk from the museum in Lincoln. The last time that I was up in Lincoln, so in February, just before lockdown. And I mean, it's just an amazing building, and it's so vast. I think I hadn't really quite imagined how big it was going to be. Really behind the scenes, it's kind of seeing everything behind the scenes. And I suppose, so I've been visiting Lincoln over the last couple of years, researching the city, and in my work over the last couple of years, I've been really interested in researching bread production, and in Hull, I did a piece of work for City of Culture, which was a film called Milling About, and I made that in collaboration with an archaeologist called Dr. Melanie Giles, who is based at the University of Manchester. And the work that we produced was developed through researching the collection of quernstones within the Hull and East Riding Museum's collection. And they've got quite a big collection there. But I suppose for me, I was really interested in the fact that quernstones are something that are very human in scale. They're obviously a kind of traditional means of producing flour, so grinding grain into flour. But I'm aware that there's quite a few in the collection at Lincoln, and quernstones aren't often found whole. So this is something that I find really exciting. I've actually got an image I'd love to share with you of the collection. Hold on one second. So this is an image that I took of the collection underground. Is it underground?
No, it's not underground, but yeah, just part of our large store. Yeah.
And these are some of the quernstones that I noticed on the shelves, but also on display in the museum itself is this amazing kind of, is it a rotary quern or a beehive quern?
Yes, yes. The
pudding stone. Could you tell me a bit more about it?
Yeah, it's the upper part of a beehive quern. You're right there, and named beehive just because of its shape, because it's so similar to what you would expect from a beehive. And the pudding stone is just delightful. It's quite it is quite a typical stone for quernstones to be made from, though, especially in the Roman period, because it's such a hard stone. So the wear happens very slowly, so it's perfect for grinding corn and grain, because it doesn't wear down very quickly. And so it's given its name because it actually looks like it could be a plum pudding. So the actual flint pebbles that are, because it's a conglomerate, so you have the pebbles within a sort of fine silica and sand mix, and they really stand out. So they can actually be really beautiful objects when they're polished up. And the grain would have been fed in through the central hole there, and then there's actually another hole for a handle, and that would turn it, and it sits on top of another flat stone and mills the grain.
And do you know anything about, I mean, the stone itself? I've never seen anything quite so. It's a really beautiful stone. Do you know where it would have come from, or and how old indeed it is?
It's the stone itself is quite often found in Hertfordshire, and so this is actually known as Hertfordshire pudding stone, and so quite often associated with sites across southern England. But it would have been quarried and used for quernstones, particularly throughout the Roman period across southern Britain, with examples going further afield as well. And so yes, so it was laid down a very long time ago. Yeah.
And is the stone that's like kind of beside it, is that also a quernstone?
Yes, that is another example of a quernstone, again Roman, but you're starting to get these sort of larger, flatter quernstones then. They're quite often made from millstone grit, so again a very hard stone, found across the country, and they were that would have been a much larger circular item when it was complete.
Wow. It's really, really, yeah, exciting. I suppose one of the things that because obviously I've been looking at the collection, and there's so many amazing things on display, including the quernstones, but there's when I first visited the museum, I was fascinated by the display on salt production in Lincolnshire, which is in the kind of main bit of the museum. And because I didn't really know anything about it, I certainly didn't know that salt would have been produced there either. Would you be able to tell me a little bit more about that? I do have some images of the display. If that's helpful for me to share my screen, I can do that. Just let me know.
Yeah, certainly. So that the display that you're talking about particularly illustrates, yes, salt production in Lincolnshire, but from the late Iron Age and Roman period, and it was quite a common, widespread industry in Lincolnshire, in both the fenland and the marshland areas, and as you can imagine, the coastline has changed considerably from that period. So quite often the sites where the evidence is found are actually much further inland now. The items from that display case are from Holbeach, St John, Helpingham Fen, and also from Inglemells. So yeah, sort of along that sort of coastal strip.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so the evidence mainly comes, the sort of material evidence is really this sort of clay material that is found, and it's very low, fired at a very low temperature, and you can quite often see the remains of the sort of chaff and the grain that was used within the clay as it was fired, and these were all used to actually create the salt. So a fire would have been lit underneath the pan that you see there, the evaporation pan, and which would have been filled with the sort of salty brine. This was at the last stage of the process of salt production, really, and it would have evaporated, and the salt crystals would be left behind.
I mean, it's just fascinating, isn't it? Where would the closest, in terms of the closest place to Lincoln, where would they have been searching for salt?
Yeah, I think really all along the coast, as we've said, really those that sort of fenland and marshland strip. So yeah, as I say, some of the pieces there are on display from Ingermell, so that's probably one of the closest areas. Yeah.
And because I understand that the salt pan itself is something that wouldn't necessarily always be found intact either. Is that right?
Yes, quite
you can
often
see here this one's kind of been patched together a little bit.
Yes, yeah, they were. I mean, they're really quite disposable items, really, and they would have quite often been broken up. Yes, as the site was sort of cleared, or they moved on to a different area, and as being made of low-fired clay as well, quite friable really, so yeah, they would have not survived particularly well. Yeah, so you can see that this example here has been under conservation, been stuck together again.
Stuck back together. Yeah, because I suppose in the display case, there's a lot of these kind of funny little objects as well, which completely fascinate me. And I know that you've got many in the collection as well. There's huge amounts, and many that I saw whenever I came up to see you in February that were found as part of the Fenland survey. And I suppose the thing that really fascinates me about these objects are that I suppose they're these things which are very human in scale. You can see that they would have been kind of fashioned out of someone's hand, maybe very quickly kind of made and quite utilitarian objects almost, but I think they're really beautiful. And you can also see, let me see if I can find an image that I have. Like the I guess how heat has been applied on them and they've slightly changed color as well. I almost feel like they look like these kind of landscapes or something like that. And I'd never heard of briquetage before.
It's an amazing word, isn't it? I really do love that word. I think it's quite a technical word. I think if you hadn't come across it before, you wouldn't really know what it was unless it was explained to you. Yes, so that term does cover all of the sort of clay supports and pans and everything that was produced to help with the salt creation, and as you say, they've got an amazing look and feel about them. They are completely utilitarian, that there was never meant to be any sort of finished surface, or that they're not meant to be beautiful objects, even though I think we probably find them quite attractive now in a different way, but yes, just very quickly and easily shaped and put together to help whatever they needed to do so, whether it was to keep the pan separated, or to actually raise them above the heat source, so that they all there are actually typologies of briquetage now, so they each have their sort of different names, whether it's a pedestal or a pan as support, so there are people who know an awful lot about how each of these different things were made, but I think, as you say, it's that connection to the people in the past with the fingerprints and yeah, just amazing.
Absolutely, and I think it's as you mentioned, the fingerprints. I think it is that kind of like that maker's mark, and that you can almost, I feel through it, you can almost touch the people. You can feel that hand around it almost, even though it was such a long time ago, and that kind of I think. Yeah, you can feel that kind of production and scale of production. I've been also, perhaps you know him, I've been in contact a little bit, haven't met in person yet, but with Tom Lane, who he sent me this book actually, which is it actually arrived in the post just last week, so I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but Mineral from the Marshes, Coastal Salt Making in Lincolnshire. And so I'm going to try and read up about that and find out as much as I can, because I'm really, I suppose, really interested in thinking about that and figuring out what that is, that connection to Lincoln, and how can I develop work from that.
Yeah.
One thing that I thought I'd show you, because I remember also when we came to the collection, you showed me the drawers that have all the kind of minerals and things in them.
Yeah.
And I've been, during lockdown, clearing up my doing a bit of tidying up, and I came across this this like salt crystal, which I brought back from the Dead Sea. It's like a kind of like golf ball thing. You see it, okay?
Yes, that's amazing.
And yeah, I was just wondering, have you got anything like that in the collection? Any salt?
From off the top of my head, I can't remember anything quite like that. Yeah, so anything from the Dead Sea or anything like that. But yeah, we would have to have a look. We do have quite a large mineral collection, but yeah, I'm not sure whether we specifically got sort of salt crystals like that. But yeah, they're just such tactile objects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also I guess a similar kind of size, and as the briquetage, it kind of reminds me of in a way. But yeah, I thank you so much for chatting with me. But before we go, I wanted to ask you, what is your favourite object in the collection?
Yeah. That's such a difficult question, and I do always find that quite hard to narrow it down to one, because we have, as we've said, we've got such a large collection with some absolutely fascinating items in it. But if I'm really, if I have to name one, I would probably say the hanging bowls, because I find those absolutely fascinating. So they're made from beaten bronze, so very thin walled bronze bowls, which have 3 hooks around the rims, and they were used for hanging. They mainly date from the 6th to 7th centuries AD, so always found sort of within an Anglo-Saxon context, but they have much earlier designs, sort of Celtic design inspiration. So, but the big thing about them is really the big mystery about what they were originally used for, because you quite often find them within a sort of burial context, sort of both pagan and Christian, but we really don't know what the original purpose was. But they have such beautiful enamel designs on them, on a central escutcheon, or the escutcheons around where the hooks are, and so I think I like them because, not knowing exactly what they are, because we always like to ask more questions about objects. So yeah.
No, that's great. I love those too. And they're on display as well.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Oh, well, thank you so much. Yeah.
Hi both. Sorry for the background noise. As Kerry mentioned earlier, we're currently working from home, and there's some building works happening on my roof. So if there's a little bit of noise, I just wanted to take this opportunity just to pose a quick question to you both, actually, before kind of moving on to wrapping up this session, which I really enjoyed. But in the conversation, I picked up on an interest from you, Laura, in the way that people use and interact with objects specifically, which can on occasion respond to touch and leave marks, a visible connection to the people that want to use these objects. In your role, Laura, how have you been able to draw out, and within your role, Dawn, sorry, how have you been able to draw out and represent these stories and histories?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, actually. Yeah, I think it is that human touch, isn't it, too? And we do try to pull that out in how we interpret the objects within displays, because you quite often get a thumbprint or a fingerprint, or even a like a dog paw print in a Roman tile, for instance, as well, and it's the same effect, and people really love seeing that and feeling that human touch. So if we can just illustrate that, how this has been made, or that, just that sort of story of everyday life, that it was just left there and someone touched it or stood on it, or we do try to bring that story out, and it makes a much better connection than just a sort of quite a cold hard object.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dawn. It definitely brings that warmth to an object, and it does allow people to feel that connection once they can kind of picture themselves holding an object, or perhaps using an object, or seeing more clearly how it would have been used in this, as you said, a landscape that has changed significantly, but is still where a lot of your audiences live or visit regularly or have relatives. I think that's really interesting. And for you, Laura, is it a kind of unique experience to be able to kind of draw out these histories and interpret them within your responses through contemporary art, performance, research, etc.?
Yeah, I think so. And in particular, I suppose I'm really interested in the fact that people have lived here throughout history and have left their marks in lots of different ways, and I suppose that's the thing, and on landscapes, and I suppose that's the thing that connects us. So being able to have that kind of, particularly in objects that are familiar, so like Dawn mentioned tiles, but I've done quite a lot of research on bricks and in other works, and I think that kind of maker's mark, or that thumbprint that's in something. I've also recently been doing a research at Must Farm, and as part of another commission that I've been doing, and with that they've it's a Bronze Age site, but they found a spoon in a bowl with food still in it, and I think that kind of, even though that's something that's intact from 4,000 years ago, I suppose it's that sort of collapse of time that I'm really interested in exploring somehow through my work.
That's really interesting. Thank you both for responding so eloquently there to my kind of impromptu question. And thank you both, Dawn and Laura, for being so generous with your time today, with your conversation, and for your enthusiasm about the collections over there. At the collection in Lincoln. We're all really excited to see how your commission develops, Laura, and to continue to hear more from you with regards to the kind of finer details you're unpicking as the project goes on. Thank you everyone for watching this recorded conversation. You'll be able to view it on the Mansions of the Future website until the end of September. And if you'd like to keep up to date with Laura's research-based project, which is titled Old Salt, we'd invite you to join the Mansions of the Future mailing list, or to follow us on social media. There's also a bit of an overview on the website at the moment about Laura's project and also her ongoing practice. Please contact us via info@mansionsthefuture.org if you have any specific or further inquiries. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you also to Jenny and Kerry for introducing today, and to the Collection Usher Gallery and their Digital Archaeology Festival for including this event in this year's really exciting programme. Thank you.
This film is part of the Investigate Learning's Archaeology Festival 2020 Going Digital. Thank you for listening.